Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Moonlit Metaphysics with Alexis. I'm Alexis J. Alvarez, metaphysical provider and spiritual advisor, and today's topic is on the Hermetic principle of mentalism. All right, let's start off with a little bit about me. My name is, again, Alexis J. Alvarez, metaphysical provider and spiritual advisor. What does that mean? That means that I'm trained and basically educated in how to recognize and remedy metaphysical imbalances, energetic imbalances. I use particular types of vibrational medicine to do so. So my forte is basically color therapy, sound healing, crystal healing, Reiki energy work, things like that. So I'm using a host of both modern scientific tools as well as ancient knowledge and information to bring about a sense of wellness and balance to people. Okay. So I do that on the private level, in coaching, on one-on-one coaching classes, in actual group education. So there is, hit up my website and there are different ways to take classes from me. But today we are jumping I wouldn't say the very beginning, but I would definitely say one of the very first topics of metaphysics and just understanding the concept of metaphysics, since this is Moonlit Metaphysics, right? So let's talk about the first principle of Hermeticism, right? I do want to go into Hermeticism and what that is. So if you have questions about what that is, you can definitely drop that down below. But I feel like that could be its own episode because it's so in depth, and we can talk about, people have been talking about it for centuries, for millennia, right? So we can definitely dedicate a whole episode just to Hermeticism and who is Hermes and where does all of this information come from. But today I'm just going to focus on the fact that there are these set of Hermetic principles, okay? They are kind of known as the laws of the universe. There are 7 of them. And the first one, or, I don't know if there is a particular order, but it's listed as the first one at least, is the Hermetic law of mentalism. So let's talk a little bit about what mentalism is just briefly. But essentially in this little episode today, we are going to cover the concept of Hermeticism. Like, what is it? We're going to kind of dive in and explore that law, define it, try to understand it in a more rational, everyday, practical sense, right? Then I'm going to try to combine it and connect it to a current quantum mechanic theory, because personally, I always feel that there is a certain sense of scientific foundation in a lot of the metaphysical practices that we use. It may not necessarily have been proven or is currently linked with scientific or clinical studies, but there is a lot of evidence, especially with new information coming out in the quantum mechanics, quantum science, quantum physics field, that kind of validates a lot of spiritual theory and philosophical thought processes. Okay, so I'm gonna try to connect it. You're gonna know. We're gonna talk about it in a second. Then we're going to talk about practical applications of the law. So once we kind of get a grasp on understanding exactly what it is, we will speak on how to apply it to your everyday life. Like, what is the whole point? What is even the point, right? I will try to help you figure out different techniques and practices that you can do to embed this principle of mentalism into your life so you can kind of step into the world of metaphysics and understand what it is that you're capable of as an energy being in this reality. Okay. And then I was kind of hoping that some people are on here to drop some questions in so we can actually Q&A it, right? That's the whole point of this thing, a nice Q&A session. So let's start off at the very top with the Hermetic principle of mentalism in a simple definition, as simple as I can make it. All right. So the Hermetic principle of mentalism states that all is mind. The universe is mental. Okay. It emphasizes the idea that the fundamental nature of the universe is mental or mind-like. Pretty simple, right? Kind of. According to this principle, the universe is a cosmic mind, right? And we kind of all exist within this cosmic mind. Everything exists as this mental construct. Our thoughts, our consciousness, they all play a role in shaping our reality. That's essentially what the principle of mentalism means. That's kind of vague, a little bit, right? Like, it doesn't really describe exactly what mentalism is or how it can affect us. It just kind of tells us that, okay, the universe is mental. Great. Bronx Witch in the house. Yes. That's basically the idea. That's the gist of it. That's the idea. There are one of the reasons that I wanted to pick the law of mentalism for this particular topic, for this first episode and all that stuff, is because, kind of like I said earlier, helps you understand the fundamentals of all these metaphysics things, how it is even possible to even think about manifesting stuff or witchcraft or ritual or ceremony or magic. Any of that stuff kind of has to come from understanding a foundation, that mentalism is the construct of at least our observable reality, right? What we can see and what we know right now. Another reason I picked this topic before we dive into exactly what mentalism means for us in this reality is because we have a new moon in Aquarius, and Aquarius is, besides new moon representing new cycles, signifying fresh new starts, like beginning anew, planting new seeds, and kind of setting a thought process for the lunar month ahead, and sitting down with yourself and constructing a plan, right? Introspection, using the mind, right? Aquarius, as an air sign, is also associated with intellectual pursuits, thought processes, innovation, just change and enlightenment in general. So this is actually a really great moment in space-time to access this law of mentalism. And yeah, like Bronx Witch says, I also believe that it is kind of the basis behind all universal laws, behind all energetic work, to be honest with you, because yeah, like I mentioned in the beginning, we don't have the proof. There aren't millions of dollars being funneled into clinical research for this type of energy work, or proving it. Even though, like I said, we're going to talk about quantum mechanics and how it definitely aligns to this quote unquote new age of these new age philosophies that have been around since like the beginning of mankind. It's definitely a starting point to your practice, to your magical work, to your energetic work, to your shadow work. Definitely to your shadow work. So if at least at minimum you're doing your shadow work and you got your shadow work journal from TikTok, which is a great thing, by the way, like go do shadow work for sure, but definitely you have to understand the Hermetic principle of mentalism and how that affects your reality. Because if you are not grasping that concept, it will become easy for you to kind of get lost in the noise. Okay. All right. I hope that makes sense. All right. I see Bronx Witch. Okay. I was going to get into the whole historical background, but at the same time, I kind of don't. I feel like that's its own episode completely on its own. Like it can serve to, be a great conversation in its own right. So I will briefly say this. Um, Hermetic law is a term coined based on the god Hermes, right? Or, I mean, it's so vague and it's so much information out there, and it's kind of like haphazard. But basically, the thing goes like this: this individual in time, Hermes, for some was a god, for others was just a philosopher, a wise teacher, um, was the foundation of all this knowledge and compiled this knowledge, traveled the world. If you know, in some stories he's just a philosopher, and he traveled the world and collected lots of different information from many different cultures and compiled it and kind of came back home and wanted to share that information with everybody. In other cultures like Greek and Roman cultures, and even with his Egyptian counterpart god, he was a god, Hermes the god. um yeah, so thank you for that, by the way. So Hermes kind of started out in ancient Greece as, I wouldn't say not a prominent god, but not necessarily a super important god at first. Um, there's some thought process that the name Hermes is derived from the terminology in ancient Greece for a bunch of stones or a bundle of stones or a pile of stones, which kind of connects to the fact that, well, one of his stories, one of his Greek mythology stories, is kind of how he was having an issue and he needed the Greek gods to kind of stand up for him, and the Greek gods who believed him would throw a little pebble at his feet, and eventually these pebbles amassed to a little pile of rocks, right, surrounding him. That story morphs into actual road boundaries, like road markers that they would use to mark boundaries, crossroads, etc. in ancient Greece. So it's interesting how it kind of morphs into this concept of an overarching deity or godlike figure that is responsible for all the information moving left, right, like the crossroads, all anything that anybody was moving, traveling, bringing, walking, any news, any food, anything that they were bringing from one place to another was kind of blessed by Hermes, by these crossroad paths, by these markers. So eventually, just life and time and the connection between different cultures, especially when the ancient Greeks moved into Egypt and shared culture, the ancient Greeks were not shy to admit that their gods were representations or had representations or comparables to other gods in other cultures. They were totally okay with that. So this connection solidified for the Greeks, at least, that Thoth, or the ancient Egyptian god of wisdom, magic, writing, even the moon, was their Hermes. Like that whole was Hermes. Okay. So this snowballed into the concept that Hermes is an all knowing deity of wisdom and insight and magic, all knowing, all mind, right? So these Hermetic principles, and Hermetic is a term that people have applied to not only philosophy, but magic, occult work, all this. A lot of people use the term Hermetic, right? It doesn't necessarily always link back to Hermes, the man or the deity as described by the ancients, but it does always link back to some sort of esoteric knowledge or wisdom that is not usually readily shared with the masses. Okay. So, ooh. Does that make sense? I feel like, because, you know, as a very anal person, as a seeker of truth and knowledge, I definitely dive down that rabbit hole to figure out where this stuff comes from, where this information is gathered and collected, and is it true? What foundations of truth does it have? So if you go down that rabbit hole, you will find discrepancies in regards to who Hermes is and where he came from and what he shared, etc. Okay. But like, I had a really good chat the other day with a fellow witch. Shout out to Brown Switch. Does it matter? Sometimes it doesn't matter where the information came from or who the messenger is. as long as the information is relatable, applicable, and makes sense for you, right? So where exactly Hermetic law comes from kind of is irrelevant at this point. And it's not, and we can totally dive into it. And I do want to, and I think I'm going to save that for another episode. But for this conversation right here, kind of irrelevant. Let's talk about mentalism. All right. So the concept that the universe is a cosmic mind and that we're just a reproduction or a consequence of that cosmic mind, we're a part of it, has a lot of foundation in quantum mechanics. Not even quantum mechanics, in just science in general. And we're going to talk about how this universal concept of consciousness actually makes more sense than just like this theoretical conversation that we're having. So essentially, if you're ever trying to manifest anything and you don't understand the principle of mentalism, you probably won't succeed. Okay? Because with what you think, your thoughts create your reality. And that sounds sweet and nice and very woo-woo. And all you have to do is think good thoughts. And then all the good things are going to come to you. And that's not exactly what I mean, right? Because there's some deeper work with that. There's sometimes a superficial thought that is like sweet, loving things, but an internal thought process or behavioral pattern is contradictory to that superficial thought that you're having. So in reality, you don't actually think that, okay? So that's just starters. That's just starters to emphasize the fact that what you think, it creates your reality, right? Sometimes you don't actually think what you think. You have to go investigate that a little bit more. Like, is this truly how I feel about this situation? Is this actually what I think? I see this a lot when people are trying to do manifestation for abundance and prosperity, for money work. Their thought process is, yes, I'm rich, money is falling on me in all sorts of ways. I'm abundant, I'm a millionaire, I'm all this jazz. But in their next conversation, when they hear something in the news or are triggered by something else in conversation, you might hear them say the term, oh, but money's the root of all evil, So how do you expect to manifest this money then? Like, are you evil? Are you trying to, you feel me what I'm saying? Your mental states, they contradict each other. So manifesting something for you will be that much more difficult, right? So mentalism, your mind, your thoughts, the way that you think about things absolutely dictates your reality, right? I think mentalism is just fascinating and so clutch. Absolutely. Because just like, wow, everything that exists was once a thought. Literally everything. Everything starts off as a thought. Before a human can put action to anything, they have to have thought about what they're trying to do. Okay. Even if it's in the very minimal, I'm cold. I need to do something about that. I don't know, I'm gonna rub some sticks together. Bam, fire. Like, I don't know. That's probably not how it went, but you understand that concept. A thought needs to precede an action, or definitely should if you're trying to manifest something specifically. Absolutely should precede an action. Okay, this goes hand in hand with mindfulness practices, visualization techniques, vision boards, the power of positive thinking. I put that in quotes because I don't want to be gaslighting you into, toxic positivity and whatnot. But there is a certain sense of validity to shifting your thoughts into a different space in order for you to manifest, right? And we can talk about manifest in a magical sense for sure. And I do mean that. Yes, to manifest, to literally make shit come from nothing. Yes. But also to manifest a certain situation, right? A literal everyday life situation. There are certain ways to behave to get a response out of certain people in your life, right? You know how to approach a certain situation because you know their buttons, their triggers, their things. So you think about the ways to approach them before you approach them, so that you can get exactly what it is that you want from that person, and not in a like grimy, manipulative, sociopathic kind of way, but in a way of like, that's just life, and that's how we engage with other people, right? Treat people the way they want to be treated, so we can get what we want, so we can manifest what it is that we're trying to manifest out of that situation. But same thing for like mindfulness practices. Like I was saying, the you're in a funk, you're in a bad mood, so you're like, I'm going to do a meditation, right? That helps shift your thought processes. After the meditation, you're like, oh shit, I feel better. Why? Because you just took 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes, an hour to consciously shift your thoughts to a different mind state, which literally creates physiological changes. So changes in the body, changes in your cells, to create a different state of mind, literally, quite literally. A lot of psychologists say this. There's a lot of scientific study, clinical study in regards to mental health, and and I'm not saying that it's as easy as just sitting there and being like, okay, my depression is gone. Cause like, no, cause there are chemical aspects to these situations. But for the most part, especially when it comes to like mild elements of depression, we can almost rewind that thought process by nipping it in the bud and taking the mental moment to correct these thoughts, right? Because if we allow them to continue in that trajectory, it's only to be expected that what will manifest is in that same realm, right? So woe is me, all this shit happens to me, this negative shit is always happening to me, oh my fucking God, my life is shit, right? A person with that mind state, I used to be one of them, can expect more of that shitty shit to happen to them, bro, because you're calling in, like attracts like. That's a different law. We'll get into that in a different time period, but you're calling in this energy. You're focused mentally on a particular subset of thoughts and beliefs. And what do you know? That's your reality, right? Oh my God. So it absolutely can impact us in those witchy, spiritual, vision boardy kind of ways. But let me explain to you how it can impact you, how it does impact you on a very scientific, fundamental way without you even realizing. Okay. I'm going to get me like a StreamYard or something, because I'm dying to share my screen and like pictures I have, because I feel like when you can see things in a side-by-side comparison, it's much easier to understand. Yes, that's a great thing. Okay, so someone came into the shop, into Bronx Witch headquarters today, and was just telling her massage clients to say, to stop saying I'm hurting or I'm in pain or, oh, this goddamn knee, my fucking back. All these things are keeping you keeping you in this mind state of illness and pain, right? What's the first step? Alcoholics Anonymous. What's the first step? Like, you have to admit you have a problem. So accepting that you have this problem is step one. Mentally accepting that this is reality. Acceptance, surrender. Cool, copy. That's what it is. My cards have been dealt. How can I change my situation? I cannot change it because Einstein said it. Trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity, correct? So I cannot do the same thing over and over again. Mentally speaking, I cannot think the same way. My back's a piece of shit. I'm hurting. I'm always hurting. I cannot keep that same thought process if I expect to heal or get better. That's insane. Like, that's literally makes no sense. You can't, because all is mental, all is mind, and the universe is mental. And if you don't change your mental perception of things before you try to actually manifest anything, you can pretty much put money on it that it will not manifest as planned, as you expected. Okay. I want to share a picture, but I can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe it to my best of my abilities, and I'm going to encourage you to do your own research and look it up. And there's no scientific, I mean, there's a bit of a scientific connection here, and you can see the connection if you look up the picture, but there's no hardcore scientific, oh, you see, all is mental, all is mind, look at the universe, it's a mind, it's a whole entire mind. But I want you to look these pictures up. I want you to Google the image of neurons in a brain cells communicating with each other, linking up the electromagnetism and electricity that is happening between synapses and neurons in the brain, right? Look that up. Look that up. Kind of looks like a web. It's webby, right? It's electric. Holla back, electric wellness. It's electric. Then go ahead and research the galaxy structures of the observable universe. Go look up how science has mapped the galaxies and the dark matter around us. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. Go look at it. It is both, they're both web-like, neuron-looking, synaptic-like type connections of electromagnetism and energy and matter. And it's so interesting to see how, as above, so below, right? Like, it's so interesting to see how something on a microscopic level that you need microscopes to see and electrodes on your brain to kind of visualize is mimicking the cosmos on a universal level, quite frankly. They look the fucking same. Just throwing that out there. The universe sure as hell looks mental. It looks like a whole brain. It looks like we're floating in someone's brain. That's a whole nother global skepticism concept, that in a brain theory that we can jump into on another metaphysical, moonlit metaphysics night. But yeah, we're living in a mind-like, brain-like structure of energy. Very interesting. Then you want to add to the fact, because I'm running over time here, you want to add to the fact of, you want to add the quantum mechanics principle of observation. And let me pull this up so I don't just completely gut it. Okay. So the principle, and you might be very aware of this already, but if you're not a nerd like me, you might not have come across this information. So the principle of the theory of observation in science and quantum mechanics is a theory, but it's also been very well experimented. You can even duplicate this experiment for like young kids in school, high school students, middle school, etc. And you might have heard this, the double slit experiment. Okay. It's actually not difficult to replicate. You can do it in your own home and kind of see this for yourself. But in tandem with this double slit experiment, which is essentially shooting light at a board that has two slits in it, observing what happens to that light, observing what that light does essentially is the main experiment. What happens at the other end? What's going on? What do we see? What's happening? What are the photons doing? What are the electrons in the photons doing? What is the light doing? Okay. So in this theory, it has been just proven and observed over and over again that for some strange ass reason, what we see is absolutely dictated by our perception of our observation. So let me go at that again. When the experimenter is trying to detect the position of a particle coming through the slits, the particle seemingly chooses to go through one or other of the slits. Oh, the scientist says, oh, I saw it go through the right one this time. Another scientist says, oh, me too. Or another scientist says, oh, I saw it go through the left one this time. Okay. The particle seemingly chooses a single path, right? However, at the end of it, when we're not observing the trajectory of the photons, and we just measure with scientific instruments the light that's bouncing off of the background surface, the light that comes through the two slits and hits that back wall. When we measure that, we absolutely see that all the particles are going through all the slits at all the times, and it's a whole wave. It's not a particle. It's one whole natural wave as opposed to a particle, and vice versa. So essentially, what the scientists concluded, this shit only matters when I observe it. It only changes based on my observation of it, my mental perception of it. What I think, all is mental, what I think is happening is my reality. Oh shit, that's crazy. That's how it is on the quantum level too. What do you know? Bombshell. No, let me stop. But my point being that, yeah, we can have 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 years of this philosophical rhetoric, this beautiful spiritual philosophy, this practice that makes sense to many and many others just have faith in. But to have some type of scientific understanding of it, especially this day and age when everything must be proven, is really is really important. It's really powerful. It's really powerful. So even science agrees that all is mental, and your reality does depend on how you perceive your observations, right? Your eyeballs are connected to your brain. Your eyeballs, when you see things, when you receive information into your eyeballs are flipping it upside down. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. They need a whole entire brain to figure out what is happening. So your eyes see, right? They just collect data. Your brain sees. Your brain tells you what's happening. Your thoughts tell you what's happening. And if I see that particle go through that left slit, that's what happened. But this dude over here, this scientist, is like, nah, it went through the right slit. And the machine tells us it went through both. Because it's your reality, and all is mental. And that's why understanding that first law of mentalism is kind of extremely imperative and a important foundation to any practice, any ritual work, any metaphysical work, spell casting, witchcraft, even spirituality in general. Like, there's a foundation. You have this kind of quantum mechanic foundation to your sense of hope, right? Like, if I just wish and pray, no, like dead ass, if you do, you more than most likely are going to manifest that outcome. Because science. All right, guys. All right, so drop any questions or comments down in the chat, because that's it for me tonight. I basically did the thing about mentalism, and if you have any questions, and if you're watching this on the replay, absolutely drop your questions down and I'll be sure to get back to you. But yeah, if you don't observe something, it's not happening. Absolutely. It's like if a whole tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, did it make a sound? That's exactly what that little situation, that little theory is about. Like, if you can't hear it, did it happen? Well, like, it didn't happen to you, right? But at the end of the wall, it's still coming out in waveform. So at the end of the day, a tree hole did fall. But that's not your reality. Yes, magic equals science. Yes, absolutely. And I love that. And that's kind of why I stay with the term metaphysical provider, because I like there to be an understanding that, yeah, it's metaphysics, but there's also like the physics that's in there too, bro. Don't forget about that. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Peace and love to you. I come back on at the full moon, so that's going to be the Friday before the full moon, which is basically in 2 weeks. So I'll see you then. Please take advantage of this Aquarius new moon and vision board or journal or do these practical things that we mentioned that can shift your mind state, right? these everyday things that you can do. Put an affirmation on your wall. So every day, if you wake up in a grumpy state, as soon as you wake up, you see that affirmation, and it instantly starts changing your mind. And for the first couple days, it's going to feel like bullshit, but you're going to practice the law of mentalism, and you're going to keep it going, because you know that what you think, and as soon as you truly start to believe what you think, it will become your reality. Thank you, guys. Love you. Peace out. See you in 2 weeks. Bye. Thank you.